Hello, my name is Joe, and welcome to my channel. Today I want to submit my third entry for Book Trek 2024, The Wrath of the Summer of Trek. Previously, I read a TOS novel called Shell Game, which I enjoyed very much. I also read a Next Generation novel called Ghost Ship. That's the kind of the numbered series. That's number one. It was interesting, but ultimately not that good. And today I'm happy to say I read, for my third book, this is Star Trek The Motion Picture, the novelization by Star Trek creator himself, Mr. Gene Roddenberry. And it's also based on the screenplay by Harold Livingston and the story by Alan Dean Foster. By the way, I've also read online that maybe Alan Dean Foster had a heavier hand in actually writing this. So did Gene Roddenberry, actually sit down and write this? I don't know. But I've heard that maybe Alan Dean Foster played a bigger part. And that's not surprising. Alan Dean Foster is, of course, famous for writing novelizations. I've read his novelization of Alien. It's excellent. But this book was really good. Just long story short, this book was excellent. I'm glad that I read it as my third book, especially coming off of the, maybe not disappointing, I didn't have high expectations, but coming off of the not so great Ghost Ship. This was really good. However, I don't think I can talk about this without really talking about the movie itself, Star Trek The Motion Picture. This is my director's cut DVD copy. I also own this on the theatrical cut on Blu-ray. And at some point soon, I would like to upgrade this to the new Blu-ray that's out of the director's cut. But I've mentioned before on my channel that this is my favorite Star Trek film. And I know it's not everyone's favorite. I know it's also called Star Trek: The Slow Motion Picture. But if you haven't seen this movie in a while, I would like to, before I talk about the novel, I want to talk about the movie. And I would like to kind of maybe sell you on the idea that this is, if you're not a big fan of it, it's worth revisiting. And if you've never seen it, if you're a new Star Trek fan and you've never watched the movies, I highly recommend this. It's just you have to come at it with the right mentality and the right frame of mind. This was released in 1979. Previously, Star Trek, of course, there was the original series, there was the animated series, and then they were going to do a live-action sequel series called Star Trek Phase 2. But then, I'm simplifying the story here, but Star Wars came out, and studios realized, we can put a bunch of money in a big-budget science fiction movie, and that, what do we have that can do that? So for Paramount, it was Star Trek. Star Trek Phase 2 kind of changed and morphed into this feature film, which then spawned several more movies. Why do I like Star Trek The Motion Picture? To compare it to a big fan favorite, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. In Star Trek II, there's a big emphasis on Starfleet being a military. They're the Space Navy. And while that is an aspect to Star Trek that I love how they are basically a Navy. They take all the Navy ranks, some Navy customs as well. I love that. And Wrath of Khan emphasizes the military aspect. I like how this movie, and they, of course, the Space Navy exists in this. They are still part of Starfleet, but the emphasis is on they are explorers, and the emphasis is that they're astronauts, and they're seeking out strange new life. And yes, the story does involve this, unknown thing that is coming towards the planet Earth. They know it's going to be very dangerous, and they have to send the Enterprise out with now Admiral Kirk taking command away from the younger Captain Will Decker, who is a new character in the kind of the Star Trek universe. So there is, a protective aspect. They are kind of the military, but when they get to this entity, they know it's going to be so powerful that they're going to have to try to understand this strange new life if they're going to save planet Earth. So the story, the story does not devolve into kind of whether it be a spaceship battle like Wrath of Khan, or many later Star Trek movies, it'll end in a fist fight between the villain and Captain Kirk or Captain Picard. That happens in a lot of Star Trek movies. A lot of Star Trek movies I love. But no other movie, except for Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, deals with an antagonist that is just an unknown. We don't know what it is. We have to try to understand it to try to stop, disaster from coming. So, it's got a sense of exploration. Another reason I love this movie is 2001 is my favorite movie of all time. I think it is an amazing work of cinema. It's no surprising then that this is my favorite Star Trek movie. This is deliberately paced. It is called the slow motion picture by some. But I love it. If you approach it knowing that, all right, this is going to be an experience, you're going to see it's going to be deliberately paced, but you're going to see some amazing special effects, some great model work, and an amazing score by my favorite film composer, Jerry Goldsmith. And if you're unfamiliar, the theme to the television series The Next Generation is actually from Star Trek the Motion Picture. I mentioned that there's some amazing model effects. There's a scene where, and some people call it unnecessary and too long, but there's a scene when we first get to see the new refitted Enterprise in all its glory. And if you're averse, if you have an aversion towards slow-paced movies and you want things to keep moving, just put yourself in the shoes of a Star Trek fan who's never seen a Star Trek movie before. You put yourself in the late 70s. You're going to go see Star Trek the Motion Picture, the first movie. All you've had as far as special effects are, of the Enterprise, are the original series. Maybe good for television, but not very good for cinema. You've seen that version of the Enterprise. So the scene where you're introduced to the refit with this new incredible model, which very detailed. That's very detailed. The movie wants to show that off to you, and it's gonna do it in such a way where you're right there with Kirk. The transporter's not working, so they have to take a shuttlecraft up to the Enterprise, and we're going to see the Enterprise in these close-up details. You get an incredible sense of size from this thing, and as the music swells and builds, the shuttle turns around, and then you get to see the new refitted Enterprise fully, head on in all its glory, and it's magnificent. And it's important to see how kind of big this new model is, because later on, when we get to the thing that's coming, this entity is quite large, and we are later going to see how we know how big the Enterprise is now. And you're going to see later on how small this huge Enterprise is compared to this just gigantic alien vessel. So showing off the model in all its glory is very necessary, I think, in this movie. So when you combine the incredible Douglas Trumbull special effects, the highly detailed and large models, which, by the way, I've watched Star Trek Picard recently, and as good as the digital models look in that, I think the Titan is a great design. They don't match what is done in the feature films, and it starts with this movie with the excellent models that you see. They're real big objects with real light, actually being photographed. They're not a digital model where you can make this big, huge ship, do these incredible maneuvers, and it kind of might remove the sense that these are very large vessels. Like they're kind of like big Navy ships. They're big space Navy ships. And this movie does this, very well, and kind of sets the bar for how the effects, sets the bar for the effects for the rest of the feature films. So when you combine the music, you combine the effects, you combine these great models, and you combine it with the kind of the slow, deliberate 2001: A Space Odyssey-esque pace, you get a movie that just fills you with this incredible sense of wonder. And at this point, I kind of want to switch gears here and actually talk about, I mean, we are on Booktube after all, so let's actually talk about the book. A lot of, obviously I'm clearly, with the movie, I'm clearly focusing on aspects that are unique to cinema. But there is that same sense of exploration and seeking out strange new life